Can you guys hear me? That's. Oh, it sort of worked. Is it? Is it? Am I here? Is it working? I've gone through about 4 or 5 iterations of this. Oh my goodness. Praise Christ, yoga. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. Okay. Sorry I'm late. I've been trying to go live for the last 15 minutes, so I'm a little flummoxed, but we'll get past it. It'll be okay. Um, I have a brand new setup, so that's probably one thing to blame. Let's see if I can just close this window because I don't need that. Okay. And I want to see if I can switch. All right, you guys say it works. I want to make sure I'm still live. You guys let me know in the chat how I sound. How's my audio? Am I live? I just want to make sure. It's faked me out a few times. Okay. All right. All right. I believe it. I finally believe it. Okay. Amazing. We're back. All right. So today I want to talk about uh, purpose. How can you find your life purpose? Um, what I've realized about this channel and this project, the way of service, is I feel like helping people find their purpose is probably the number one thing that I can help with. And then once I solve that, we can move on to implementing and living that purpose. But once you figure out what your purpose is, it becomes very easy to orient towards the way of service because your purpose is to share your gift with the world. And what I've realized is that the world that we live in, the systems that surround us, are designed to keep us away from our purpose, or basically keep us confused and distracted. Because when we are confused and distracted, then they can set the agenda and they can control your time, your money, your energy. And so if they can keep you in a state of distraction, then they can control your spiritual energy. And basically all the power that you have is given away by you because you're the one who's deciding to be distracted, right? We always have complete control over our own will. I believe that's God's intention, right? Um, yes. So hello everybody. Look at these. Look at everybody. I want to say hi to everybody, and I did say I'd read the chat. So Praise Christ Yoga, Susan, Matthew A, Eden Park, welcome. I'm so glad to have you guys here. Thank you very much. Um, I love you too. I love you too. I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm really excited because this week I was able to prepare for the stream. And I know the streams have been decent even without preparation because there's a lot of things that I want to talk about. But this time I spent yesterday and a good part of today figuring out, listening to some great content, reading about how to find your purpose, and really thinking about what led me to this and what I've learned from my path that I think can help you. Okay? So the biggest thing, like I just was saying, is the world wants to keep you distracted. And I feel like the number one way that the world keeps you distracted is by preventing you from finding your purpose. Because once you find your purpose, you realize that everything else is a distraction. And you're just not going to be interested in all these things. It'll be so much easier to ignore. When I first started the way of service 2 months ago, I was finally like, wait a minute, I don't want to do any of these distracting things, right? Like video games, Netflix, I don't know, just wasting time, reading things that aren't relevant, whatever it is. Because all of a sudden I was like, no, I know what I want to be doing. And anytime I was distracted from that or prevented from doing it, I was a little annoyed, right? Um, so the way that the world keeps us distracted is by stopping us from finding our purpose in the first place. And when it keeps you from when you don't have your purpose, and actually from my research, 75% of people say that they don't know what their purpose is, or they don't know basically the direction of their life. So that's huge. I mean, that's like basically what the economy is based on, is keeping people distracted, keeping them in a consumer mentality. I was talking to Yale about this, and he mentioned in the last live stream, we don't produce anymore, right? It's like weird to produce. It's weird to not just be a consumer. People can't relate to you when you try to talk to them about that, or at least most people. So, like I said, the idea is to keep you distracted, and the primary way to do that is to never not allow you to find your purpose to begin with. And they do that by they put you through the education system, right? I've got a video about that. The education system is broken. And in the education system, it's not about figuring out what is each student's talent. It's about, let's stuff them into a box. Let's stuff into them all the facts and ideas that we think they should have. And it's not until middle school, at least in the United States, when you're like 11 or 12, that you finally get to divide into subjects. And even that, you divide into subjects, you don't really have a choice. You don't get a choice maybe until high school. And so basically we're ignoring talents and differences between children on a societal scale until they're like 13, 14 years old. And as a consequence, basically they learn, okay, in order to succeed, I have to conform. I have to follow what other people tell me to do. And I want to make sure I'm still live. I'm paranoid because it went wrong. So let me know in the chat if you're still going, because I want to make sure that the chat is updating. So just say something. Okay, you're good. Thank you. Okay, great. Sorry, it's the first time with this setup. So anyways, yeah. So that's what happens in school. Same thing kind of happens in work. If you get a job, by nature you're trying to fit into a role, right? And I think in the workplace you have a lot more freedom because you're producing, right? You're still doing things for the company, but you're still fitting into a role, and so you're not really encouraged to follow your purpose. You don't have freedom to do that. And so in the world that we live in now, the best way to really follow your purpose is to be an entrepreneur, is to start a business. More power to you if you can do it through your job. And I think there's obviously a lot of great ways to do that. But usually, like I said, you're filling a role, and in that role, you're supposed to do specific things. And in order to succeed, you compare yourselves to other people in the role. You compare yourselves to what their goals are for you. You don't write your own goals usually. So it's not really encouraging you to find your purpose. Okay. So let's see. I want to read the chat here. Love your energy. Thank you. Yale says, do you think that some people might have that purpose, like the purpose to be a follower in some corporation? Yeah. Yeah. Another thing, purpose and like career, it sounds like I'm kind of using them synonymously, and maybe that's because that's what's happening in my life. But I think our lives go through phases, right? So your purpose is not necessarily your career, and your purpose will change over time. So it is legitimate for you to have a job where it's not maybe your life's goal to have that job, but you need to have that job at this point in your life to learn the things that you need to learn to get to the next phase, right? Oh, Susan says my volume is low. Okay, yes, I will turn it up. I can see that in my readout here. Is this helping? Is this okay? That might be too loud. All right. How's that? Does that look good? I still feel a little low. Okay, I'm going to turn up another notch. Testing. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Let's go another notch. All right. Appreciate you guys. Tell you if there's any. Okay. Yeah, please let me know how the audio is. I've got it turned up about as high as I feel like I should turn it up. So yeah, that'll be good to know. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Like I said, this is what happens when you go live. It's pretty funny. I realize that when you do a live stream, you really can't edit it. Like I actually went into YouTube to edit out the dead time. There was like 10 seconds of dead air at the beginning of the previous live stream, and it just erased the chat replay, which is a huge part of a live stream. You got to have the chat replay so people can know who I'm talking to. So it's like I cannot do that. Do not edit your live stream. So everything that I do, everything that I say here, it's live, it's real. I mean, I love it. I think it's really cool. I love this format. I think people love this format. It's funny how it's just so much more exciting than watching a pre-recorded video, edited video. Like people are just so much more excited about it. In some ways, you'd think it's kind of the same thing, especially if people aren't interacting. But it's different. It's got like a different energy, right? I don't know what it is, but it's pretty cool. All right, I do want to, like I said, I want to interact with the live chat. So I want to put a bookmark in what I was talking about, finding your purpose, and read the live chat. Matthew A says, when our country was founded, most of us owned our own businesses. At some point, we consolidated under giant corporations that broke up during the Great Depression. Small businesses started back. Then in the 90s, were large corporations, and now we're all doing small businesses. Yeah, yin and yang in our lives clearly displayed. Right. Yeah, maybe you can explain that a little more. You're saying then, I don't know what you mean by we're all doing small businesses, but I agree with you that the original, the founders, our ancestors, or maybe the cultural founders of the country, they are entrepreneurial mindset, right? Especially because this country was founded on, I mean, there were the Native Americans, but it was built in the wilderness. I mean, it was wilderness. So if you think about it, I mean, you're not getting a job in the woods. Your job is the one that you create. So I feel like that is kind of in the blood of everybody who lives here, and it's a culture that's carried forward in the geography. So it makes sense, and I also feel like that's the American dream. The word American dream was like a sales pitch, but it's evolved, and I feel like the American dream means something for each of us. And I feel like the modern American dream, especially if you go on YouTube, it's becoming an entrepreneur. It's becoming like a multi-millionaire. It's creating a startup and then selling it for $1 billion, right? That's like the American dream, and it's possible with the internet and all this. So I think most people are understand that and are want to get there, right? I don't know. It's tough because I do want to allow. I want to give the glory to the people who are in jobs and doing great work. I mean, there's no judgment here. I'm speaking to people who don't know where their purpose is and are looking for direction. And also like just kind of going with the momentum of the time. Like, what does the moment say? What is the moment now? To me, the moment is like internet-based entrepreneur, right? There's so much opportunity for it. There's so many ways to do it. And I think there's so much need. Like the reason I created the way of service was because I had this realization that there was something that I have studied for years and years. It was spirituality and philosophy, specifically around relationships and applied to our life, integrated with science. And I could share this gift in a way that could reach thousands of people and change people's minds and change people's lives in like a very short period of time. So I realized that, and I was like, I want to start this business. Yale says, I hope we go back to even more small business. We go through ups and downs. Matthew says, we go through ups and downs. Yale says, you can build such great relationships in business. Absolutely. Matthew says, we need to take ownership of our destiny. That's right. And that's what I was saying before. This was a realization that I had literally as I went live, was they keep us distracted. They keep us out of knowing what our purpose is. And that's how they keep us in the consumer mindset. And they control our energy. They control our time and our money. That's how they do it. It's amazing that it clicks now. It's like they don't want you to find your purpose, because once you find your purpose, you're not going to be distracted. Their tricks are not going to work on you. And they'll keep trying. And, that's a challenge going forward in life. Even once you find your purpose, how do you become more and more productive and, more fulfilled without getting distracted. And because when things will go wrong, when you're obviously when you're following your purpose, and you'll be tempted back to your old habits, and that's their chance to grab you again. um, Yale says they're trying to destroy small business and independent contracting. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, it's amazing what we're seeing is like this amazing awakening, this like spiritual energy like bubbling up. I just see it, I feel it in the forms of people's realizations, but also in the form of technology, right? Like the fact that I can do this live stream and reach probably thousands of people in the long run, um, with my phone. The phone which they might have given me to try to distract me, right? But my phone is recording me right now. This microphone is pretty cheap. Like, it was pretty easy to do this setup. So they're basically, in my opinion, and I believe it's true, they're fighting a losing battle. They want to keep us distracted. They want to keep us in this old system because they have so much money and power. Just is that's what they care about, and it's all concentrated into this system. So if people start escaping the system and leading others out of the system, they're not going to have their money and power. At least they're not going to have as much, right? And so they're fighting it, and they're pulling all the levers that they can. And there's a great quote. I even downloaded the clip. I wonder if I could. I shouldn't try to play it because I don't understand how to make it work. But I could probably pull up the picture here. Let's go. Let's go to the split screen for the first time here. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. All right, we're gonna flip. We're gonna flip. There we go. The Princess Leia quote. You can read it. The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. There we go. There we go. I'm in the corner. Yeah. Yeah, this quote, I'm using this in a video here. I can point at it like this, right? I actually already downloaded this clip, and I plan on using it in a video coming up. It's just like the more that they pull their levers, the more torque they try to apply to all the people, the more will escape. Just like the image that Leia puts is, the tighter your grip, the more slips through your fingers. You can think about if you put like a liquid in your hand, and the tighter you squeeze, the harder it is to keep it in your hand. It's just a perfect analogy for what's happening in the world. They try to, like I said, they give us this phone to try to distract us. But if you can use this tool to do the exact opposite, right? To lead people into something far better. So, yeah, that's how I see that. It's a great transition. Now that I think about it, the first thing I wanted to talk about, the first trick. Okay, I don't know. I guess we're 30 minutes in, but I want to give you the first idea how to find your purpose. Okay, and that is this: what bothers you in the world the most? I took this idea from Dan Coe. He calls it an anti-vision, right? And he applies it to your own life, but I applied it to the world at large. What in the world bothers you the most? And I can tell you the moment that the way of service was born in my mind and in my heart and in my soul. And I go over this in my first video, but it was when I was reading the news and seeing just these horrible things that were happening. And then my printer broke, and then I saw something else that really bothered me. I don't want to mention that on YouTube, but eventually people will know. There's one thing that I've seen for years and years and years and years, and it bothers me more than almost anything. Okay, But finally, what I realized was not the fact that it was being done to me, right? It wasn't the fact that my printer broke because someone sent an error message to it, okay, to just break it. It wasn't the fact that my printer was broken that bothered me. I realized this was the realization. It was that someone decided to do that to me. And that blew up into, all the bad things happening in the world comes down to people doing the opposite of the way of service. Okay? It's people making decisions to just screw other people over because it benefits them in the short run, right? It benefits them materially, benefits them monetarily, or gives them power, gives them leverage, like we were just talking about. They're making that decision, and I realized it wasn't even like the things that are done to me, because I can get over this stuff. I mean, I'll survive. My life is great. My family is fine. Like we will get through whatever people throw at us. But it was really the fact that they would choose to do that, and then I also realized at the same moment, it was like a flash, right? That was actually that was so sorry. Okay, so the first thing is that it's not the thing, it's the intention. And then what I also realized was this has been the theme of my life. And so I was like, oh wow, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to win this argument, using the truth, using the fact, the reality, the things that I've studied for the last 20 years, basically, the things that I've researched in my own life, away from my work, away from all the things that people required of me, of my own free will, in my own free time, right? This is the things that I'm looking at. And it's always been about the truth and relationships, and basically those things combining together. And so I was like, okay, I can win this argument. I can make the argument that the right way to be is to follow the way of service, even if you want to be selfish, even if you want to get the money and the power. The world is orienting, as Leah says, this is the way it's going. If you want to be part of the future, if you want to be successful in the long run, I believe you have to adopt the way of service. Because I don't think this method of tightening your grip, that is not going to succeed. And the people who follow that, they feel unfulfilled, and that's the biggest problem, right? Like, but apart from that, it all goes together. And so I realized that I had the talent and the knowledge, and I had the passion for it, because I just had this deep, disappointment, like lifelong disappointment with the way that people treated each other pretty often, and especially, people treat each other well, like behind the scenes, but on a political or a global scale, people treat each other really badly. People make a difference between, the people who are close to them and strangers, and I believe spiritually that's incorrect, and it's short-sighted. And actually, what you'll find is that we're actually close to everyone, right? So that was the realization. So there was three things, right? There was the passion, and then the specific identification of the aspect of it, right? So there was like the bad thing being done, like the printer code breaking my printer, but then there was the person behind it who made the decision, and that was what really got me. I was like, okay, I can win the argument. I can stop people from doing this. This is how I can stop them, is through this path of the way of service. And then I realized that everything I had studied going back, and it's funny, I've left up my 8-year-old. I did a YouTube video 8 years ago, okay, when I came back from Anarchapulco in 2016. I guess it's almost 9 years ago now. And it was about relationships. And I went back and I watched it. I was like, does this fit with my channel? Should I leave it up? And I was like, yes. And also it blew my mind that what I had come to YouTube with, it was synchronicity, right? I was watching some David Wilcock. He calls it time looping. It's like something that happens and then it happens again. And when you look back in your records, you're like, oh my goodness, this was meant for me to see today, 9 years later, was that this video was about the same thing. Okay. And, and so I had the passion, I had the knowledge, and I had the argument. The argument is that this is the way to do it, no matter what you think life is about. Okay. Um, yeah. So lack of open. Back to the chat here. Matthew says the tighter the grip, the faster they pop out of the grip. Right. The faster. Exactly. He says a lack of open mindedness. Yale says pass laws in 14 states now where you can't do it. Oh wow. Oh right. Yeah, the independent contracting law change. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, tightening their grip. Praise Christ Yoga says we have been living in far fear, and we are awakening and wanting more. It's changing. Yale says, I agree. That's what I was saying. Yale says, the thought I wrote down kind of relates to the point. Victory and surrender are opposite, not defeat. Victory and surrender are opposite, not defeat. Defeat is not active. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure how that relates. If you can expand on that, that'd be helpful. Yeah. So let's continue. I've got a lot prepared here, and I don't expect to get through all of this, and I'm hoping to make some videos about this. I think that this is a very important topic. So I'm going to be talking about how to find your purpose and how to like stay on your purpose, how to get through the difficulties, and also what are the things that take you away from your purpose and how to solve those problems too. So I told you the story, my origin story. It came from the first idea, which I think is probably one of the most powerful, which is what out in the world bothers you the most? And then how would you in particular solve it? And how would you in particular be the best at solving it in that way? Right? That's one angle on how to find your purpose. Okay. So the second point, hold on, I'm going to go to the live chat before I get to the second point. Yale says, I'll have to think about it. That's fine. But something about you can't win by not fighting that is different than defeat. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought for sure. It's like if surrender and defeat. It's like you could be defeated if you just don't even try. That's, or I don't know. I'm trying to relate it to what we're talking about. It's like if you stay in this distracted mode, you're defeated, right? That's like the result of surrender is like letting someone else set your agenda, right? You're surrendering yourself. Yeah. All right. So the second piece comes from Bashar. He's a online guy. He does channeling, and he basically answers people's questions. And to me, his spiritual perspective is one of the most accurate that I've found. He's very consistent, very impressive. And he has basically one idea that is the biggest idea that he shares, which is follow your highest excitement. And this relates to basically he puts it like this: at any time, you can look at your life and look at the options available to you. Which option is the most exciting to you? And it's important to differentiate this from like distractions, right? But what productive thing that you can do, let's put it that way, is the most exciting? And this is a way to parse through the infinite to-do list and different facets of a project that you might need to do to hone in on where you can have the most impact. I forget who coined it, but there's the 80-20 rule, right? The 80-20 rule says that 20% of our effort creates 80% of our results. So one of the biggest ways of building a great business, getting those exponential growth, getting that great immediate success, like going viral, all this kind of ideas. You want some exponential curve, right? The way you do that is to identify the 20% of your things that you could do that create the 80% of your results. So because your excitement is like this is what Bashar says, I believe it's true. It's like a signal from your higher self, right? It's a signal from spirit that directs you towards the thing through your intuition that you're supposed to be doing. And it's related to our purpose because we're going to be directed towards the thing that we have the most talent in. And I think this is a good time to show you another visual that I wanted to share. Yeah, here we go. Ikigai, okay? This is a Japanese concept meaning a reason for being. And it's the combination of all the aspects of something that allow us to fulfill basically everything we need out of what we do in the world, okay? So I'll just go through this really quickly, read the basics. So it's what you love at the top, you can see there. What you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for, okay? And it's interesting because I almost feel like what the world needs and what you could be paid for, maybe those should be combined. And because if the world needs it, you can find a way to get paid for it. I think it's important to be creative and not try to stick yourself into a box when it comes to this stuff. You have to be, in order to follow your purpose truly, you have to truly eliminate all the outside noise and come from basically zero and approach a problem brand new from only your perspective. Because another aspect is we each have a unique purpose and gift to give the world, and it is something that only we can give to the world. And the only way you're going to do that is by being true to yourself, right? Following your own instincts. So like I said, if the world needs it, I think you're going to find a way to get paid for it. And if you don't see that mechanism already in place in the world, there might be even more opportunity for you to create something that you can get paid for. And then, there are other ways where you can get paid, even if it's not profitable. There are nonprofits, there are charity organizations. There are ways to do things that are not profitable, but the world needs them, and you will get paid for it by basically donors who believe that something like this has to happen. And I hope that in the future, there'll be more and more good people with money. This is another big part of another video I want to make. I want to talk about resolving our issues with money, because so many good people are like ashamed of making money. They're ashamed of getting paid for their purpose. But what happens there is there's two main things that I want to point out. The first one is if you don't get paid for doing your passion, your purpose, then you won't have time for it. You're going to have to do some other job. And so it'll just be a hobby. It'll be something that you don't really do. And then the other thing is if you don't get rich doing something good, then the only people who are going to be rich are the bad people. And so they hold all the money, they hold all the power, and that's where we're at. That's where the world's at right now, and we need to change it. I love a good Venn diagram. That's right, Yale, yes. Matthew A says, I'm printing this diagram out and we'll use it. Thanks for sharing. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, look up Ikigai. There's a lot of discussions on it, and we're going to talk about it a little bit here. Randa's math page. Hello, welcome to the stream, my friend. He says, I've started to realize that a business not charging enough can be immoral too. Yeah, working but bouncing. That's totally fine, man. I'm glad you could drop in. Great to see you. Yeah, exactly. If you're not charging it, a business, obviously, I think the worst thing for a business to do is to just lose money and then go out of business. Let's say your business is necessary for the world and then you go out of business. I mean, that's a tragedy, right? And that can be a result of not charging enough. I know something about this. I've been through it. Like I've mentioned before, I used to run a restaurant, and that was definitely a mistake that we made, was not charging enough for the incredible good product that we were giving. I mean, we were giving local, sustainable, organic food, homemade from scratch food at the lowest price that we could. And I thought that was the right thing to do because I wanted it to reach as many people as possible. I wanted it to be accessible, but as a result, it was very difficult on the business, and I feel like it almost attracted the wrong kind of people. It was people who didn't appreciate the thing, right? This is another thing I've heard in my, once you get into entrepreneurial stuff, you start watching YouTube videos on it. Like I said in another one, where do we learn everything? We learn everything from YouTube. And they were saying, like, the person who pays $5 for your service is actually going to expect more than the person who pays you $200 for your service, because they're trying to squeeze every last drop out of the service. But the person who pays $200 understands, it's like, I'm going to pay a good amount and then I'm going to get what I want, right? And it's not that that person doesn't have expectations, but the person who's paying less is almost, they're trying to manipulate the situation. They know they're like getting something out of you, and that's like the benefit to them. It's not about a mutual exchange. It's not about mutual respect, right? Yeah, Yale says, totally true about attracting the wrong people. Matthew says, know your customer base. And Yale says, and also sometimes something that costs more seems more valuable even if it's really not. Right, so then there's the other side of it, is if you're the business and you're charging too much, now you're being dishonest. The other side, you're like getting one over on your customers. And that all kind of stuff, I feel like we got to move away from it as a society, or we're really screwed. And I feel like we're kind of feeling that right now. We're like in this getting screwed mode. It's like, basically, we're looking at a world that if we continue to do things the old way, it's going to be a nightmare, right? It's like this AI surveillance, new world order, lockdown situation versus, all of this technology freeing us. And I think that it can and will free us, but only if we follow the way of service and we do it in this mindful, spiritual way, where we change the status quo. I mean, that's the whole point of the way of service, is to change the status quo. And I think it's necessary. So let's go back to this diagram. So what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can be paid for. So yeah, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. I think it's interesting, these little aspects of the circles here, satisfaction but feeling of uselessness, like what you love and what you're good at, but the world doesn't need it. It's almost like those are like selfish pursuits, or things that aren't affecting the world, not changing people's lives. It's fun for you, but eventually you're going to have this empty feeling, right? Delightfulness but no wealth. So I guess this little spot here, where you're doing what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs, but you're not getting paid. That's what we just talked about, right? It's like, if you're not getting paid for doing what you love and you're helping the world, you're actually hurting yourself, because you're not going to be able to do it for a long time. You're kind of martyring yourself, and that's no good. Okay, so, and then let's see. Here is what the world needs and what you love, and you're being paid, but you're not good at it, right? So I think that definitely happens a lot to people. It's like, here's a thing that I think is a good idea. I think of like when I was being led to be a doctor, right? And being a doctor does not fit my talents. My talents are, I believe, philosophy, spirituality, writing, communication, um, and those things are not, those are not in the, if you're an MD, that's not what you're doing. But it seems like it's something good because you can get paid for it. I was good at aspects of it. I was good at the science aspects of it, but it just isn't right. So you have this sense of, it says uncertainty, and I feel like it's almost like you're putting on a mask. You're like trying to do something that you're not good at, and I don't know. I've seen so many people do that, so that's obviously another trap. Okay, so then down here, comfortable but feeling of emptiness. What you can be paid for, what the world needs, what you're good at, but you don't love it. So that again, I feel like that's similar to what I was doing. I was good at least I was good at the school aspect of becoming a doctor, but I wasn't excited about it. I wasn't like, yes, I can't wait to get there. I can't wait to continue this path. It was just kind of sad, right? Even if you're good at it, you got to have all of these things. Yeah, so that's the 4 aspects of ikigai. Back to the chat. Yale says they should put this in school because just telling kids do what you love is not enough to create a successful person. And myself and many others, I'm sure, feel like we fell into that trap. Praise Christ Yoga agrees with Yale. Also, you can do anything. Amazing you say that, Yale. I literally just listened to a video and he has these 2 points, right? So the 2 sides of it are you can do anything, right? We've always heard this. It's like you could be anything you want to be. No, you can't. There are things that you're good at and there are things that you're not good at. And if you try to just do whatever you want, and what you want is a very vague thing, right? And it changes through time. You have to figure out what you are supposed to do and do that. So you can do anything. That's the lie on one end. And then on the other end is you'll never amount to anything, right? So it's these 2 lies that we hear in school or maybe from bad parents or whatever. I think nobody would say a parent who said you can be anything was a bad parent, but somebody who said you'll never amount to anything, that's pretty bad parenting, obviously. Better to, have obviously a positive falsehood than the negative one. But yeah, it's amazing because like they tell you these 2 things, but then school itself is not structured at all to figure out what you love and do it, like at all. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, you're in school until you're 13, 14, and then finally you get to pick like one class might be different, but there's all the mandatory classes. And then in the class, you got to just follow the curriculum, do what the teacher says. I mean, there's no aspect of following and figuring out what you're good at specifically. I mean, it's kind of crazy when I think about it. It's just so awful. I mean, I knew that the education system was awful, but when I think about this aspect of it, for the first 18 years or whatever, yeah, basically until college, you're just told to do the thing that they tell you to do. Even in college, the first 2, 3, so let's say till you're 20 years old. So you live 20 years, and then after you turn 20, it's like, okay, now figure out what you're good at. And they're just like, I'm in a panic. I have no idea what to do. And so they just do what somebody else wants them to do, and then they become a good consumer, right? Yeah, the road to hell is paved with good. Yale says the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's not malicious, but to tell a child, but it is unwise. Right. I'm just comparing it to the other side, right? They're both not good. Good parenting is, teach your child about the world, and probably as early and often as you can. So yeah. All right. So we talked about the diagram. We talked about the highest excitement. All right. Which of these next points do I want to talk about next? So, yeah. What aligns with your talents? Ikigai astrology. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about astrology and synchronicity. I think this is another way to find your purpose, is to see signs. And this was what happened to me. Right now, I see it 333, 333 in the chat, right? I'm like, signs, boom, there it is. It's 333. This is what happens. This is what happened. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But yeah, I believe that synchronicity puts you where you're supposed to be, shows you that you're on the right path. When you ask for signs from God, your spirit guides, whoever it is that you are asking for signs from, they come. And they come right away. Right away, right? I just saw that, the number. And I believe that this works going all the way back into your life, right? So if you have any familiarity with the zodiac chart, it's just the most basic astrology. The idea being that, the stars and the planets and the sun and the moon and the earth were in a specific alignment on the day of your birth, and you can learn things from that. Now, you may not think it's true, but I have seen some incredibly accurate things regarding astrology, and I think it's worth just looking at briefly. So, here we go. Yeah. So, here's the zodiac signs. So, the first thing I want to mention is the 4 elements, right? I have my elements video, which I love. I love that video. I love the elements. I don't know what it is about them, but there's, if you just look at the basic elements, that's how you can like bring yourself back into a baseline, drink water, breathe clean air, touch the earth to ground yourself, and see natural light from the sun. That's the fire element. But if you look at this chart, each of the zodiac signs has an element. And then this chart also mentions what are the aspects of that element that kind of apply to a personality. So for me, I'm a Pisces. That means I'm a water sign. So I am imaginative, empathetic, emotional, nurturing, and intuitive. Those are all totally true. And those are all things that I feel like I bring into the way of service. That's what I'm here to do. I feel like it came into my imagination. It's about empathy and nurturing. It's about like the emotion of service, the emotion of purpose is what we're talking about today. And I follow my intuition, okay? And none of these are like better or worse than the others, but I'm just saying like this is another way to find your purpose. Look, get an astrology reading or read about it yourself and see what parts of you fit into this dynamic. And I guarantee that you'll see some synchronicity here. Again, that's the synchronicity aspect. What in your life has led you here? What were you born with? What do the stars tell you? What can you learn from the stars about yourself? Of course it does, Yale. Of course it does. Yale says he's a Virgo, which is Earth. Yeah, grounded, practical. Yale's been very helpful. Yale, you have been very helpful with me in this project. And I feel like you're like helping me with the details, detail oriented. That's been huge. I mean, so yes, I believe that applies to you. And nobody knows the answer besides you. I think that's a really important thing. So what do you think? I mean, do you feel like you're an earth element? And everybody has all of the elements within them. But this is just kind of like, what is your natural alignment? And the best thing to do is to go with that, not try to resist it. And you can go with that and then also nurture the other elements in your life, It's funny because I'm water sign and I feel like sometimes I have difficulty with the fire aspect. It's like the opposite is challenging. Like I sometimes I don't feel as energized as I want to feel, right? Matthew A says, I tend to be grounded, so very earth. Are you an earth sign? I'm sorry, I don't know your birthday, but I'm curious now. I want to know. So yeah, let's go through the other elements. I just went through water. We're going through earth, so let's just mention detail-oriented, down-to-earth, cultivated, grounded, practical. Yeah, he says he's a Taurus. Yes, so you're an earth. That's great. Praise Christ Yoga says she's fire. I know her. That makes a lot of sense. So fire is brave, artistic, confident, passionate, and independent. And then air is witty, social, spacey, intellectual, and good listeners. So it's interesting how these all correspond to the elements video that I did. Because air is about communication. So they're social, they're witty, they're good listeners, right? Communication goes on the air, gets into our ear through the air. So they're good listeners. Matthew says her birthday is Taurus, but certainly fire. It wasn't based on my birthday. I took a test on it. Yeah, I mean, and I don't think this stuff is hard and fast. There are other influences. There are other aspects that lead into like what element are you, and your purpose is not going to be just decided by your zodiac sign. Okay, you just look at your zodiac sign. It's like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to be artistic. If you're fire, it's like maybe you're not artistic. I mean, there are other aspects of this. There are other opinions. Definitely never follow any one thing. And like I said before, it always has to come from within you. What does your gut say about this, right? Yale says, I'm earth, but I have the most trouble with fire. Fire and air are yang signs, and then earth and water are yin signs. So that's another reason that you might have trouble with them. Yes. So this transitions to the next point I want to make on how to figure out what your purpose is, which is, what did you love to do as a child? Okay. This is, again, back to kind of your zodiac, the synchronicity of your talents before you were indoctrinated in school, right? When you were like, let's say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What did you love to do? What did you do in your free time? What were you good at? What was the most interesting to you, right? So for me, I realized like I used to do a lot of gaming, okay? I was raised on regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo. And some people played sports games or fighting games or whatever. I played the story-based role-playing games. And the one that you might be the most familiar with, here I want to show you. I loved Zelda. And this is Link holding the Master Sword. And I realized I was analyzing this within myself. There were a couple aspects of this, right? Number one is saving the world from evil. That's what I'm trying to do with the Way of Service. And I realized that was always the theme of the video games that I played, right? A small group of people emboldened with like magical power, like magical weapons, okay? Right here, you see Link, he's holding the Master Sword and it's glowing. And I was always fascinated by the magical weapons, especially like for the main character, he would get this like powerful, amazing sword. And I realized it's like the sword of truth. It's this magical, powerful thing that can cleave through the falsehoods. And I loved that stuff as a kid. I loved it. And that's what I basically spent so much time doing, was playing these games, listening to these stories. And these stories had great philosophical, moral lessons about good versus evil. And like, there's always a good and an evil, and they like balance each other. So when I look back in my childhood and like what defined my childhood, and it was totally these games. And how does that relate to my life today? And it just is like, I'm doing exactly what I was doing as a child. I'm trying to save the world, with like magical tools in like against all odds. It might sound crazy or, inflated ego. And I'm not pretending that I'm going to do it alone. That's the goofy thing in the video game is like, the hero or the group of like 10 people, they're able to save the world just by themselves. Absolutely not the way the real world works. But that theme of having a hero, having like magical tools at your disposal, being against the odds, and always trying to do the right thing, like be the hero, like make the right thing happen in the world, make the right choice. Whenever I played these games, I don't know if you remember the different games like Knights of the Old Republic, It was a Star Wars game, and you basically, throughout the game, you made choices that made you become a dark side or a light side. And I always would go with the light side. You know, I would always play my character to try to do the best thing, to make the best choices. That was just what I would lean towards. And I feel like there was a great lesson in that game where I actually tested it by saving the game, and I went back and I made the bad choice, and then you fight the final boss, but you're in the light side, but with like a little bit of a penalty, and it's like an impossible battle. Versus if you make all the right choices and you're 100% light side, the battle is like 10 times easier. And it's like just that little smidgen, just that like 1% change off the 100% being good takes away all the power. At least that's one of the things that I took from that particular game. So that is my story of my childhood and how it lines up with what I believe is my purpose. You know, tell me in the comments and in the chat what it is for you. You know, what do you feel? What you know? What is it? What was in your childhood, and how does that lead into what you do today? Right. All right, we got a lot of chats. We got a lot of chats here. Going back into the chat. Okay, Matthew A says, I love to write. I even wrote a children's book when I was 10. That's interesting. So, I also love to write. I remember writing a story. I very vividly remember a story I wrote in 4th grade, and like we read it to the class, and the class loved it, you know? And it was one of these stories. It was like good versus evil, and it was like time travel and all this thing. So, and I remember like the rush of people being interested in my writing. And then I didn't really follow that for a long time until today. I feel like now I'm doing writing for this channel and sharing it with the world. And it's bringing me a lot of happiness and satisfaction. Brian, hello, Brian. Welcome. Brian McCracken says, Chrono Trigger shout out. Yes, Chrono Trigger is a fantastic game. And one of those games that I played, small group of heroes saves the world. And he ends up with a beautiful blue sword just like this one, right? Zelda was the bomb, totally. Atari Asteroids. Yeah. Earth can put out fire. Yeah, exactly. You throw sand on fire and it'll put it out. Yale says, I used to think pure evil was not real and only in games. Now, sadly, I know it's true. Yeah. I mean, that's true. But I feel like even then it's not pure evil, right? Even the people who are pure evil, they have that seed of goodness in them. And that's kind of the hope of this project, is that I can even win over the most evil people. Be like, hey, look, you might have done it wrong your whole life, but you can redeem yourself. And it's better to redeem yourself in this lifetime, you know? I think that's a big spiritual lesson too. Like, don't wait till you die and have to come back and do it all over or go to hell or whatever you think happens. But I believe it's been proven that we have multiple lives. So if you don't do it right, it's that much harder to repair the damage, because you have to basically redo the lifetime. You have to become a child again, all this stuff. You have the opportunity while you're living to right the wrongs that you've done in your life today. That's the message I want to give. Also, true goodness is also real. I agree. Yeah. But again, not in humanity, right? In humanity, no matter how good someone is, they always will have that shadow aspect. And that doesn't mean that they act on it, but they just know that it's there. You know, pretending that we have escaped every evil instinct is how you back into, you know, falling into darkness, falling into that trap once again. In Earthbound, you beat the last boss literally by wishing. My favorite game of all time is Earthbound. And yeah, you pray. You pray at the end to defeat the final evil boss. And then everyone praying with you is what wins the day. And I think that is true. There's a lot of moments in these video games where the main character has to stop fighting in order to win. And that's another great lesson from these games. Brian says, whoa, yeah. Sorry for spoilers in Earthbound. It doesn't give away the plot. Earthbound's such a good game just because of like the wit and the humor. It doesn't matter if you know that detail, honestly. Matthew A says, love and positive energy will call forth like-minded people. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is another lesson that I've learned and that I believe is true, is evil cannot win because evil takes from what good has created in order to do anything that it does, right? So evil starts with like the theft of some energy and then it can do the thing, right? So the basic idea of this is like, you're corrupting a good person to be evil. No one is born evil, right? So you have to take, a child, which is good, and corrupt them in order to be evil. Another idea of this is like government comes from taxation, and taxation is a form of theft, really, because it's coercion to take money from people without their consent. And so basically what happens is that everything the government tries to do almost gets the opposite effect. So the idea is that evil cannot succeed, cannot win in the long run because it requires good. It's a parasitic relationship. And so if evil ultimately wins, you become king of the ashes. If all evil wins, it's destroyed everything. Good creates, evil destroys. If evil triumphs, everything's gone and then it destroys itself. And so now you just have a pile of ashes, and maybe that is evil winning as like a barren wasteland, but I don't think that stays. Even after 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 years, life is going to come back. Okay, so basically, even if evil wins, it doesn't win, and it can't win to such a degree that it isn't able to take parasitically from good. That's why I think the world that we live in today is almost like it's going so far towards evil that it's almost like if you watch the controllers, they're letting off they're giving back to the people a little bit in certain ways, right? They're trying to, like, free speech, I feel like, is kind of being restored a little bit ish. I don't know. But there's certain things that they know they have to like push and pull certain levers, no matter how evil they are. They know that they can't just constantly make everything worse. They have to back off here and push up there, and back off here and push up there, and it's a twisted what a tangled web they weave, right? It's too much work in my mindset, and it's not sustainable with all the complicated systems, with like AI coming on, the internet, cryptocurrency. The idea of decentralization, it just becomes so much harder to control things. And again, it's the same. It's this quote, right? It's this quote. All right. Praise Christ Yoga says, I kept getting ignored as a middle child. Birthdays forgotten. I have purposely made myself unforgettable. I am now grateful for my childhood helping shape me into a unique person. Yeah, I mentioned the childhood, what was your childhood like? But also another aspect of that is, what are the negative things in your childhood that kind of gave you the ability to be what you are today? And I think that's a good example that you mentioned, Praise Christ Yoga, that now you are an unforgettable person. And so having that experience as a child has taught you how to be yourself in this very powerful way. And that is all part of your purpose, I think that, one of the hardest things to explain from a materialistic, non-spiritual perspective is the bad things that happen to children. And I don't think that it's good that bad things happen to children, but I think that in some cases we choose to come to these lives and have these difficult experiences because we know that those experiences will help us learn these lessons faster, help us develop particular skills that we're going to need later in our life, right? Yale says, you can't spoil a 35-year-old game. Remake Earthbound. Also, another point, most of those games were Japanese, and you see the difference in cultural and ideas. Yeah, they're even called JRPGs, right? Role-playing game, but Japanese role-playing game. That was the majority. Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, even Zelda, they're all Japanese. And yeah, I mean, the Japanese culture has this very strong sense of honor, which was in these games, and kind of like good triumphing. And it's not something that you see in American-made media. And when I think back, just the very different energy that I would get from these video games from, television and movies. Like Disney, for example. Our daughter watches some Disney, and there's very few Disney movies where there isn't some absurd bad guy driving the plot. And I've realized it's a very lazy plot point or plot. It's very lazy writing to just have some super bad guy that has a lot of power and just creates problems. And then it's like, oh no, they got to fix it. It's not interesting, right? Versus like in a lot of these video games, it's like the evil is good people doing the wrong thing, or it's like a dormant evil that they summon by doing the wrong things and like focusing, like Final Fantasy VII. It starts with basically there's this corporation is draining the life energy out of the earth, and it's because of that all these things are set in motion. And it's not that there's some big bad guy, although there is one later in the game, but that's not what starts things, okay? All right. Eastern versus Western philosophy, yes. Susan says, fire here, yes. Yale says, I love that praise Christ yoga. If you can find a lesson or positive in everything is a good way to live. Totally. Yeah, that's what I just said. Yale says, probably our first dip into Eastern philosophy was JRPGs of our youth. Totally. Yeah, get that Mako. That's right, Mako from Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, I mean, and that's, again, here I am talking about like Taoism. I just mentioned Ikigai, right? It's Japanese, right? And so I have been very into Eastern philosophy for decades, and I feel like there's all these lessons from Eastern philosophy that I'm ready to share with the world that fit right in with the way of service, right? And I feel like it's just a different angle on things that people in the West here probably haven't thought of. And that's another beautiful thing that I see happening in the world. The East and the West are coming together. So Western concepts and ideas are being brought to the East, and Eastern concepts and ideas are being brought to the West. And now we're seeing an integration of those things, right? And I'm excited about bringing Eastern philosophy to the West because I've done a lot of studying of Eastern philosophy. All right, it's 3:57. I feel like I can go a little longer today. I started late, so I want to give you guys the full hour and a half because I really appreciate everybody who's showed up and everybody who was waiting. So if I get one vote in the chat, I will stay till 4:10. Okay, just one person has to say stay another 10 or 10 minutes. And we'll do it. Let's see. I want to pull up my notes. Yeah, we just talked about synchronicity and signs. I'm on number 5 out of 20 points that I came up with. So I'm not going to get through all of them. Yale says, do it. Yes, I'm in. Yes, stay. All right, I got it. We're going till 4:10. We got 13 minutes. I will continue on my list, but if there's anybody in the chat who has an idea or something that they want to relate, like I would love to hear what in your child, I mean, you guys already mentioned a few things about your childhood, but what is your purpose? How did you find it? Have you found it yet? Do you feel like maybe put a 1 in the chat if you think you're living your purpose. Put a 2 in the chat if you don't think you're living the purpose. 1 if you think you're living your purpose. 2 if you don't think you're living your purpose. I'm going to put a 1, but that's only as lately. Only within the last 2-3 months, I think. Praise Christ Yoga has a 1. Beautiful. 1-1. Yale says 2. Okay. Yeah. Zach, hello. Welcome, Zach. Zachariah Adam, welcome. He says stay till 4:10. Let's do it. Rackham Willie's here. Welcome. Welcome. All right. Can I put it to? Is it possible not to? I don't know what you mean, Zach. Is it possible not to what? Rackham Willie says, I would say more recent as well with the 1. Right. Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of synchronicity happening here. I feel like a lot of people are making changes in their life that are leading them to their purpose. And I feel like that is kind of why I'm timing, like it felt like the right thing to do to create this channel and to start this project, because I think that now is the time to help people do this. Praise Christ Yoga says, just in the last 2 or 3 months, too. Yale says, I would say so, Zach. I think most people are not living their purpose, right? Is it possible not to live your purpose? Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think when we're, and this goes back to like listening to your gut. You know, if you're not having a good time every day, like, do you wake up excited, or do you wake up kind of dreading what you know you have to do? That's the difference. If you're living your purpose, you wake up excited. You know, you wake up energized and ready to do it. I think there's a ton of people, and based on just surveys, 75% of people say they don't know what their purpose is. They're not following their purpose. But I guess maybe what you're saying is that even if you're not living your purpose, you're still living your purpose because you're where you're supposed to be anyways, which is, I agree with that. But I think part of that life journey is to make that decision consciously, because we have free will. So that's the important idea, I think. It's like all the things that you do that are not your purpose, and all the experiences in your life, they serve your purpose because they lead you there eventually, because you get so sick of your life, or you get to the point where you just want to change it, right? Yeah. Matthew A says, so cool to see you in your zone. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yale says, look at the rate of antidepressants being prescribed, all the other awful things that happen. Yeah. Happy and balanced people who don't do awful things. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I think. I feel like Zach's maybe coming at it from a metaphysical perspective of it. It's like, it's almost like a paradox, right? It's like you're never not where you're supposed to be. You're never not in the right place, but you also have free will, and you need to make the right choices if you're going to make the progress in your life. And maybe another aspect of this is like, even if you try to avoid it, eventually you're going to end up living your purpose, because, you'll get so sick of it, or life is going to force you, like illnesses happen, I think, for this reason. Often people will get a chronic illness or an injury that forces them to stop and change what they're doing. And it's just amazing how many times people will say, I'm happy that I got sick. I'm happy that I got injured because it stopped me from continuing to do this thing, which wasn't good for me, wasn't good for my family, wasn't what I wanted to be doing ultimately. And I was led into this other, much better path. Rackham says, I'm at the point that I know... Drink a little water. Rackham Willie says, I'm at the point that I know that everything that happens is the purpose. I'm learning to associate value to those aspects that remind me that life is the purpose and everything else is extra. Okay, interesting. Maybe you can expand on that. What do you mean by life is the purpose? Because, yeah, I mean, like everything is life, right? So which aspect of that do you mean? All right, we got 7 minutes. Yeah, I want to show you this X quote that I retweeted. I think it's a fantastic quote. Follow me on X if you haven't already. All right. Way of Service on X. Twitter. I'd rather call it Twitter. I feel like X is such a stupid name, but I guess Twitter's stupid too. All right. Here it is. Spend your time doing only what you can uniquely do. I feel like that is like the most perfect way to put this. Because, you know, even with the Way of Service, you can be like, okay, I can help people. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do whatever. But if it's something that other people can do and probably are doing better, you haven't quite honed in on what is it that you uniquely can do. And again, as you have to look back in your life. Maybe I can just rapid fire. I'll just show you my notes. Actually, you guys can. It's another aspect of the new economy. Give away everything. Give away your best material. So here you go. Here are my notes. All right. Oop. Do that. So we were down here. So you can just screenshot this. These are all the things you can come up with. But I wanted to mention going back into your history, right? Look at what are the things that you're interested in? What are the things that you have studied the heck out of, okay? You have probably done so much reading or watching YouTube, learning a particular subject or topic. For me, it's been relationships, spirituality, philosophy. I've put hundreds of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of hours, let's say, conservatively, into learning these things. What have you studied the heck out of on your own free will that now you can teach, right? This is part of this question. What can you share? What can you do that only you can do? And this is, again, the 80-20 rule. What is the thing that you can do that only you can do, and that's why it's going to have the most impact, right? Show you the rest of the list here. This was just the notes for today. All right, let's go back into the chat. Yale says, I agree, Willie. It's kind of a don't fight the flow, but I'm also battling with these ideas of good and evil, and sometimes the bad way or the evil way seems easier. Right, and the world definitely makes that appear to be the case. But in the end, you're not going to be happy following the evil path because you're going to hurt your relationships, you're going to hurt the people that you're actually trying to help, and then you're hiding something, you're living a lie, right? If you're trying to, because nobody is openly evil. Everyone who's evil tries to convince the world that they're good, right? So then you have to lie. And living a lie is, I mean, I can't live that way. I know a lot of people live that way. I can't live that way. Yale says, but I see what you're saying in terms of external input. Rackham Willie says, if you it will take me longer than you have left for me to text that out. I'll DM you. Sounds good. Rackham says, thank you, Yale. It was rare for me to be agreed with. I know we all feel that way very often. I feel like hopefully time goes on, people who think like us people will agree. And I've got surprisingly little pushback from these ideas so far. I'm anticipating more pushback than I've gotten, but I've gotten very little pushback from the Way of Service, also because I haven't really made it out into the public yet. But so far, pretty good reception. Matthew A. says, I know my wife is living a life where she does things only she can do. Very cool. Rackham Willie says, there is a flow of the carnal mind and of the spirit. I strive to balance between. I leave the lower labels behind. Matthew says, I see her struggle sometimes, but she amazes me on how she gives so much to so many, and I see the blessing she gets on giving. Matthew A. says, Bruce Lee said, be like water. Water can be calming, soft, warm, hard, cold, sharp, panic-inducing, needed. Did you watch my my water short, I have that quote of Bruce Lee. Rackham Willie says 100%. Yes. All right, we've got 2 minutes left, and I don't know. I guess I could go another 5 minutes. I haven't gotten. Usually I get the hook. I get the hook from the wife and the family, like I'm in trouble. But we actually have some friends over. Everything seems quiet and taken care of out there, so I can keep going for a little bit. I'm having a lot of fun, so I want to. Let's see. I'll go to 4:15. I don't want to end in 15 minutes or in 5. I don't want to end too quickly here. Thank you, sir, for this. I have to drop. Okay. Thank you for joining, Matthew A. I appreciate you. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Maybe there's some in here that don't make any sense, and I can just go over really quick. I feel like this one, life begins at 40. This one, so I've heard that a couple times recently. I'm about to turn 40, okay? And I've created this project 39, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I get it. I got to do this thing. So the logic behind the life begins at 40 thing is that when you turn 40, all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but finally, all the old distractions don't work on you anymore. When you get to be this age, you've been through the money, you've been through the sex, the power, the positioning, social climbing. You've done all that, and it no longer has the appeal to you. And so all of a sudden, these distractions kind of fall away, and you realize, oh wow, I need to have purpose. I need to follow a path that actually works for me. And that was one of the theories. Another theory is that by the time you're 40, you finally are like an expert on something. You finally have put in so many hours learning that you can share it with the world, right? But I was fascinated by this idea that, yeah, all these other things that I used to care about, pursuing, material possessions, material gains, they just don't hold the same energy. And to those of you who are younger, this is a great lesson to learn, because if you can clear your mind through meditation and through contemplation and find your purpose earlier, you're going to have that much better and more fulfilling of a life. So maybe this message to you is like, you don't have to wait till you're 40. But the reason that you might end up waiting till then is because you need to gain the expertise, but also you have to become disillusioned with the material gains that the world is promising you. Yale says, I want a full video on 90s JRPGs and 2s. What are TWOSs? I don't know what that is. But yeah, 90s JRPGs, that would be fun, right? It's funny because I want to make videos on all these crazy different topics, but with a YouTube channel, you're not going to grow unless you very specifically solve a very specific problem. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm trying to focus in on what is the one thing I can help people with the most and just hit that as much as I can. Once you're big and you've got a big following and people watch your videos just because it's you can start to do videos about anything. But maybe it's worth doing the RPGs anyways. Oh, the way of service. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, if you had done WOS, I usually do WOS, not TWS. He meant the way of service. Okay. Zachariah Adam says, Carl Jung, life really begins at 40. Up then you're just doing research. Yes, Carl Jung. I love that it's Jung that said that. Yes, that was the quote, and I mentioned earlier, you're doing research up to that point. Exactly. Susan Dobbs says, 1. I'm glad to hear it. Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. I think I am going to kick it off here at 4:15. I'm a little bit, my voice is running down here. Let me just look through the list one more time. Oh, the 9 intelligences. All right. Let's just throw this in there. It might take me a little bit over the limit here. Oop, that's not it. Sorry, I'm just all right, we'll just search for it. Here we go. Yeah, so here's another way to find your purpose is to look at this list of intelligences and which of these are you the best at, right? This is like it again, there's so many ways to come at this. There's ways I didn't go over, which I plan to go over in videos and maybe live streams. But which of these intelligences are you good at? That's going to answer this question of what is the thing that only you can do, right? So let's see. Going back to chat. Oh, I could get the chat on the screen. That would be cool. There, we can put it. Well, this is what I'm talking about. Can I make this bigger? Not really. Sorry, I'm just experimenting. I'm experimenting live. Maybe I shouldn't do that, but that's okay. We're gonna close it out here in a minute here. Rackham Willie says, I like that quote totally. Zachariah says, I wish I set an alarm. I missed the first hour. Hey, no big deal. You can come next time. Have a great one, folks. Rackham says, everyone liked the video before. Yeah, I never asked anybody to like. If you're still watching, please hit the like button. It helps spread the video. Helps grow the channel if you hit the like button for any of my videos. Especially if you actually like it. I think that's important. That's part of the YouTube algorithm. Don't just like it just for the heck of it. If you don't like it, don't like it, you know? So yeah, that is my story, folks. I am so happy to do this. I love doing it. Like I said, hit the like button, comment down below if you're watching the replay. Subscribe to the channel. I always get super excited when I get new subscribers. And then you can hit the notification bell. You can set it so that it'll notify you whenever I'm going live or when I release a new video. Yeah, I've got some great ideas coming up. I'm excited to release more material. I wasn't able to get a video out this week because we were all sick. I was sick for Monday and Tuesday. We had an incredibly bad time with that, but it's over with now. Luckily, I feel great. The live streamer is almost like my best material right now because doing it live that's my genuine self, and that's what I got to get into the videos. So the videos are going to get better. My presentation's going to get better. Everything's going to get better. And hopefully we will all be able to follow the way of service and share it with the world. So I love you guys, and I will see you next week.